Hello and welcome back to Premier Injuries once again. And we are talking through your questions and answers. Remember, this is a weekly slot here on the Premier Injuries YouTube channel. So make sure to hit that subscribe button because we are here for you, for the FPL community, with all your footballing questions. And of course, these questions are being answered by the man himself, Mr. Ben Dinnery, with the insights, with all the essential information for injury news. Before we start, I always like to ask how you're doing, Ben. How are you keeping, especially after last weekend?
It's been an emotional roller coaster, Jason. Look, you roll with the punches. You accept and hold your hands up on occasions. But, of course, people just deal in black and white, and that's never the case, particularly around injuries. There's so many grey areas. There's so many influencing factors that determine returns to play. And we covered most of it on our injury update, I think, which went live on Tuesday. So offered a little bit more explanation. But look, there's light at the end of the tunnel. We've still got a few game weeks to go. That's all in the past. Let's look to the future and move on.
Yes, because I always ask you as well, are you looking forward to game week 34? Because there's a few good fixtures in there as well. But I do mention last weekend because the Dave 155, I think in reference to some of the things that went on, has asked, do you think Harry Kane is fit to start?
Bastards. Bastard. No, he's 100%. He's ruled out. Definitely. Next. Okay. We'll move it on. It's a sore subject.
Rubbing salt into the wound there. Roti Kiriki, I think that's pronounced correctly. Any forecast on Rafinha's return to full fitness?
Difficult one to call. Impact injury picked up against Manchester City in the dying moments. People talk about, when players suffer a dead leg, that it's quite a trivial matter that can be dismissed fairly quickly. A quick Google search of Christian Ziege will tell you that's not the case. I think it did end his career and almost cost him his leg. So that shows the severity of the problem. We have heard from Marcelo Bielsa today, Thursday, ahead of this weekend's game. He says that Rafinha is still managing pain. There is restricted mobility in the leg, but he believes that he's in the final phase of his recovery. So maybe an outside chance of game week 35, but it's one of those types of injuries with regards to pain management, that has to be monitored on a daily basis. It'll be very sensitive. If he was to take a knock, say in full contact training, that could set him back maybe a week or two. So we wait and see. But like I say, outside chance for game week 35.
Maybe just kind of adding to this, is this similar to like the Jack Grealish situation where there's no kind of set time for return? It is down to how the player is managing the load.
It's slightly different in the regard that Jack Grealish is an overuse injury. And while we thought it was maybe around shin splints, we think how it's been handled by the club's medical team and reading between the lines that's maybe they want to try and avoid a stress fracture, so it's a case of managing his load and not wanting to push Jack too hard too soon, at risk of maybe ruling him out of, say, the Euros and for the remainder of this campaign. Whereas Rafinha, that's an impact injury, so like I say, very painful. You've ever had a dead leg, for the majority, it's maybe a 7 to 10 day scenario where it's really, really painful, then you're fine. But on occasions, it does become a little bit worse. And like I say, it's just a case of managing that and making sure that injury evolves and let nature take its course. And hopefully once Rafinha's feeling, a little bit better, the pain eases, he's get that mobility back, and he can return to the training pitches and train normally.
Diorexity has asked, any news on Masuaku?
Masuaku, it's a difficult one because it's the same knee problem that he had surgery on that kept him out for a number of months. Now, there's a little bit of inflammation and swelling in and around the joint. So the issue is, you address the swelling and that inflammation, but you need to find, the underlying and the root cause of that. And it's one of those types of injuries, again, where a player can maybe train 4 or 5 days absolutely fine, get through a session without any obvious issues, and then all of a sudden you have a reaction overnight. You wake up the next morning, and then it immediately sort of flagged as a doubt. So this is one that David Moyes will want to be very careful with, given the player's history. I understand that maybe this weekend will probably come too soon, but again, it's one of those ones that they will assess and look at on a daily basis. And even if David Moyes comes out on Friday and says that, Masuaku is likely to be fit, we still have Saturday and Sunday to go, training sessions before Monday night's game. And there's nothing to say that there won't be a reaction within that time frame. Looking at his squad, David Moyes does have other options. I think Johnson's played there. We're seeing a return of Fredericks. Aaron Cresswell is probably a little bit closer to a return. Balbuena, he's had his red card rescinded, so he can come back into the, that back line along with Dawson. So, you look at the players available, and David Moyes, won't want to take any unnecessary risks as well. So, maybe not this weekend, but we'll, again, judge that on a daily basis.
Continuing the talk of the West Ham squad, there may be another person that might not be risked or might be risked. Zegan Stout has asked, how is Rice starting to look?
Yeah, progressing really well, probably slightly ahead of schedule. There were concerns initially that he could maybe be ruled out for the remainder of the campaign. Then we looked at in and around maybe a 6-week timeline. He looks to probably be back, just before that. There's been a return to the training pitches this week, but that isn't fully integrated with the group. So he has been training individually, which is obviously, the next phase of his recovery. Ideally, West Ham, David Moyes will look to step up that with the sports science department and medical team. Again, game week 34 seems, a little bit out of the question too soon, but maybe, if things progress really well, you could be looking at possibly involved in the squad in maybe game week 35. But there's a lot of things that have to go through first. Long gone are the days where you will say maybe, you will nail a timeline on a particular player. It's all about task-based activities. So within his rehab process, he will have a number of tasks to complete before he can progress to the next level. And he's at the stage now where he's working outside, he's working on the grass, and if he can gun through that, then maybe he'll start taking part in warm-ups with the group. If he comes through that, then he'll take part in further sessions with the group to the point where it's full contact training and he's working normally.
Jesus Christ, my cat scared the life out of me. Jumped on me. Right, let me edit that out.
I thought that was just you saying, Jesus Christ, that was brilliant, Ben. Thanks.
That was so well, mate. Every time we chat, I know it's the highest the quality caliber, so it goes without saying, really. Continuing the eye on defensive players, though, Woody the Woodgate, so maybe a reference to Jonathan Woodgate, another defensive player there. Any news or prediction on Michael Keane's recovery?
Difficult one, because there's been very little spoken by Carlo Ancelotti. And, I'm trying to think the last game that they played last Friday at Arsenal when they won 1-0. There had been no mention prior to that game at the Emirates of a problem for Michael Keane. It was only after the team was announced, Keane was omitted from the squad, that we found out he's been managing an ongoing hamstring issue and had failed to train in the build-up to that match. And again, we look at, I mentioned it with Masuaku. When we're talking about Everton, in that back line, we have Mason Holgate, we have Ben Godfrey, we have Yerry Mina. I'm sure I've missed somebody else out of there. But, there are plenty of options for Carlo Ancelotti. So what we do know with hamstring injuries, high recurrence rate, high re-injury rates, and he doesn't want to be throwing him back into that team, too soon when he doesn't really need to. Everton will look at that result at the Emirates. Decent performance, a clean sheet, and the chances are, even if Michael Keane is fit, it could be that he returns to the bench and he keeps that back line, intact. If anything, maybe Yerry Mina is slightly ahead in terms of his fitness and better placed to maybe come into that side if Ancelotti does want to change things up. But like I say, we don't have a lot from the club. unfortunately. But even if, like I say, even if he has trained this week and he is available, he may not be deployed in that starting 11.
Duma17 has asked a question which I think we've discussed, with the defensive and attacking assets videos. So please do check those out there. But do you think any City asset is worth bringing in till the end of the season? So just kind of my 50 pence on this. I think the only one that you can be kind of certain of is Ederson and maybe Diaz. I mean, any others there, Ben?
Not that I'd be willing to splash premium amounts of cash on, if the truth be known. Great result in Paris on Wednesday night. That stands them in good stead going into that second leg. If City can wrap up the league, I think it is, if results go their way this weekend. And, with the Champions League second leg tie and then potentially a final in the offing, why won't Pep, look to protect these players and rotate fairly heavily? Kevin De Bruyne was man of the match against, PSG on Wednesday, so he's going to be a player that wants to treat with kid gloves. I just don't see the game time of our players being able to sort of nail down it that starting 11, and it's just too much of a risk. If you do so, maybe take a punt on those lower priced options. Maybe the Gundogan is still a decent way into that City midfield. Maybe even the Fodens, possibly. But I would always do that on the understanding that, right, well, they may not start, and therefore you're going to need one or two decent players who can come in off the bench.
This is the annoying thing about the City assets, kind of referencing as well our videos and our articles that we did on what happens to teams in certain areas of the league towards the end of the season. Teams like Man City and to a lesser extent Manchester United, those teams pushing for the title, push on towards the end of the season. They score a lot more goals. And probably the City side will do that. They'll have the handbrake off, especially after that PSG game. It's just which assets can you trust? And you can't really at the moment. As I said, Ederson might be fine. He might be a good replacement for Mendy, who we talked about. Even he's in like the Tuchel roulette wheel that just makes Pep's one just looks like primary school level, doesn't it? So in terms of it, it's not worth the risk for me. I want players that are going to be playing towards this very hectic end of the season, a very unique end of the season. I think there will be a lot of goals, but a lot of teams will rotate as well because of the not usual start to the season that they had. Players didn't have enough time in preseason training to get fully fit, and so there'll be a lot more rotation. Finally, Wanalo221 has asked, Bamford has hit a bit of a dry spell in goal scoring form. Is it clear to stick with him, or is there somebody else of equivalent price that you would take ahead of him? I mean, probably at the moment, the equivalent price forward is Iheanacho, but I still think that towards this end of the season, Bielsa will push his boys and Bamford to, another level. I think Leeds are probably one of the only teams that I can count on continuing working hard toward the end of the season. But what is your thoughts and feelings on Bamford and Leeds, Ben?
Yeah, look, there's a lot of things to like with Leeds. It's their first season back in the Premier League, so maybe where other teams maybe taking their foot off the gas, you would expect League. It's all new to them. They're still enthusiastic. They're still working as hard as ever. And yes, Bamford has had a little bit of a downturn with regards to his form, but he's at a price point where you expect that he's probably far exceeded anybody's expectations in what he's delivered this season. What we do know is he's going to start. He's that focal point of that Leeds attack. And, just the way they play their attack inside, that full press, that high energy, dynamic style of play, they will continue to create chances. And even Bamford will manage to convert a few between now and the end of the campaign. I'm more than certain.
Even Bamford then. And I think what I would add as well is there's good fixtures for Leeds now towards the end of the season. We discussed, should you double up on their defensive assets because they do look that good. But I would also say that there is a chance that fans might be back at the end of the season as well. And I think Leeds fans, because, as you said, their first time back in the Premier League for a long while, they're going to be chomping at the bit to be back in the stadium, and that's going to give a huge boost to the players. So I think that that could be a bit of a difference as well. Maybe a few goals that haven't gone in before because of the empty crowds, because there hasn't been that inspiration. Bamford might, get a bit of energy from the crowd as well. But I hope that we've given you energy. I hope we've given you belief in your teams and given you the help that you need towards game week 34 and beyond. As always, do make sure to subscribe, like, and share the video. It helps us out, and it helps, us understand if we're making good content for you as well. Do get involved with the comments. Say if you've enjoyed it, or say if there's anything you'd like to be changed. But for now, I'm going to just wish you the best of luck and hand it over to Ben.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Thanks for some great questions. Some of them not so great, but always happy to answer and always willing to put myself out there to be shot at. Good luck ahead of game week 34. We may just need it. I think there's going to be a few surprises in the offing between now and the end of the campaign. But yeah, look, don't get caught out by the early deadline. If you haven't already seen, the Defensive Assets podcast has dropped, and the Attacking Assets podcast will follow quickly on its heels. So watch that, yeah. And the stat man, Mr. McKenna, has pulled out some gems in there. But for this week's guys, that's all done. I'll see you again soon.